I hate the term mental illness. Why? Because it stains everyone diagnosed, making them less likely to seek help. 1979, so I told you my story. Well, a big part of my story is when I told my dad I wanted to be a psychiatrist. He asked me why I didn't want to be a real doctor, why I wanted to be a nut doctor and hang out with nuts all day long. Now, my dad would not have gotten Father of the Year award. He just wouldn't. And quite frankly, that was hurtful. But I had already learned not to attach my self-esteem or the decisions I made in life to my dad. But he reflected what society felt about psychiatry. And I've come to believe it's psychiatry's fault because they don't act like real doctors, right? What real doctor never looks at the organ they treat? No one is shamed for cancer or heart disease, even though they both have lots of lifestyle causes or lots of lifestyle contributing causes. Likewise, no one should be shamed for OCD, bipolar disorder, or PTSD. Yet, if we do not embrace a new paradigm, and that's what we're going to talk about, to lower stigma, many more people will suffer and die. Every 40 seconds, someone dies from suicide. It's the second leading cause of death among young people, has increased 35% since 1999, while cancer has declined 27%. Why? We're working on the wrong paradigm. Mental illness places emphasis on your psyche or your mind, which is vague and hard to define, when our brain imaging work clearly shows these are brain health issues that steal people's minds. Meet Jared, diagnosed with ADHD in preschool. Hyperactive, restless, impulsive, no friends, learning problems. He saw 5 doctors, was prescribed 5 different stimulant medications. They triggered rages and mood swings. When they wanted to put him on an antipsychotic medicine, his mother brought him to our clinic. Here's a healthy scan versus Jarrett. He has a pattern called the Ring of Fire. Giving him stimulants is like pouring gasoline on a fire. 10 years later, on natural supplements, brain healthy habits, his behavior is better, the rage is stopped, he's able to make friends, he was on the honor roll for 10 straight years. And when he told me that, I said, why? He said, on someone's worst day, I want to make it better. Can you see how we changed the trajectory of Jarrett's life from chronic medication to chronic trouble, low self-esteem, underperformance, to someone who's performing at a high level who wants to make a difference in society? This is his picture working at the Long Beach Fire Department. I am so proud of him. So let's talk about mental health treatment throughout history. In ancient civilization, if somebody had a brain health problem, they'd drill a hole in his skull. It was called trepanation, to let out the evil spirits. In 400 BC, Hippocrates would have changed their diet, got them to exercise, and then he would have bled them to balance the humors in their body, the fluids in their body. In the Middle Ages, they may have put Jarrett in an asylum. In the 18th and 19th century, they may have sterilized him in a program called eugenics that actually started here in the United States, but was the precursor to Nazi Germany atrocities. In the 20th century, Freud would have put him on the couch 4 or 5 times a week and talked about his relationship with his mother. In the 1950s, he might have had a prefrontal lobotomy. That's where they take like an ice pick-like instrument, put it up through the orbit of your eye, the orbital bone of your eye, and damage your prefrontal cortex. The guy who developed that actually won the Nobel Prize. In the 1960s, you might have had electroconvulsive therapy, not the buzz that Jarrett would have liked. And today, we're in the 10-minute med check. Try this, try that, try this, without any biological data. We can do better. And brain SPECT imaging completely changed the discussion around mental health for me. As I said, no one really wants to see a psychiatrist. No one wants to be labeled as defective or abnormal, but everybody wants a better brain. So what if mental health was really brain health? People would see their problems as medical and not moral. It decreases shame and guilt, increases compliance. One of my favorite stories ever. I gave a lecture at the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. I hate that term, by the way. Like, who wants to join the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill? I was like, seriously, these are brain health issues. Anyways, I gave a lecture. And the president of the local chapter called me up and said, I have a son who has paranoid schizophrenia, who's also using drugs, who's homeless, but we can't have him at home because he's dangerous. He said, would you see him? And when Stephen came to the clinic, at Amen Clinics, you first see the historian to gather all the data. And then you see the psychiatrist or the functional medicine doctor. And while Ronette, our chief historian, was seeing Stephen, she left and knocked on my door. And she knocks on the door and she's like, this guy scares me. I don't want to see him with my door closed. And I'm like, oh, I should go see what's going on. And so I walk into the room, introduce myself. Stephen doesn't look at me, and he just says, I'm not taking medicine and you can't make me. And I'm like, Stephen, I don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. Can I get you some water? Just to try to lower the tension in the room. I said, but would it be okay if we looked at your brain? And he had seen scans around in the clinics, you know, we had them framed and such. And he said, that would be okay. And he got scanned, and I was in the room with him while I got scanned just to make sure things would go okay. And afterwards, I pulled up his scan on the computer screen. And so I showed him healthy and I showed him his. And he just stared at it for like 5 minutes and didn't say anything. And I thought he was probably having a conversation with the voices in his head. And after 5 minutes, he looked at me, and it's the first time we had eye contact. And he said, can you help me? And I said, we have better medicines than the ones you'd been on that had given him a lot of side effects. And I ended up putting him on 3 milligrams of Risperdal. And I said, I want to see you again in 3 weeks. And they left. And the mother was really happy. And Stephen was compliant. And a week later, I come out of my office to get a new patient in the waiting room. And his mother's sitting there. And I know they didn't have an appointment. And I'm like, in my head, why is she here? And when she saw me, she stood up and grabbed me and kissed me. And when I saw him 3 weeks later, I paid for his follow-up scan. And it's the one on the right, and it's so much healthier. And as I put the 2 scans next to each other, I'm like, which brain do you want? My assistant, Shelley, came into my office and said, Stephen's on the phone and he's really upset. But I'm really anxious because I'll lose my disability if I go back to work. Well, that's the problem. It's fine. SPECT, in my experience, increases forgiveness and compassion in families. And I love that so much because Stephen's mother clearly saw it as a medical problem that needed help. If someone had cancer, if someone had diabetes, if someone had heart disease, no one would shame them for it. They would rally around and help them. We need to get rid of the term mental illness and call these things what they really are, brain health issues that steal people's minds.